Good afternoon, my beautiful people. I go by the name Shota De Olusegun. In this particular live session, we're going to dive deep into, the complete reality of the universe. So I'm going to be reviewing Robert Lawrence Kuhn. So that video is titled, does a cosmos have a reason? Does cosmos have a reason? That is the title. I want us to go deep into it. Then I need you to know that everything I'm going to be saying in this particular video, in reviewing this video which I'm going to play, will be based on my research publications. So I have two research publications on peer-reviewed journals, and they are titled, the first one is The Time Theory of the Universe, while the second one is Seeing the Anatomy of Quantum Gravity Through Formula of Everything. So everything I'll be saying to review this video will be based on that, my novel research discovery. Please take note of that. So now let's dive deep into it.
I stare at that awesome photo, the Hubble Extreme Deep Field, an almost empty patch of dark total sky, reveals more than 10,000 galaxies, each galaxy with billions of stars and planets, some with hundreds of billions. How breathtakingly vast the universe. Yet in each cubic meter of space, on average, the universe as a whole has only one atom. Still, over billions of years, gravity has gathered those atoms together, forming galaxies, stars, planets, such that life and mind, human beings, we could emerge. I am compelled to ask why. Why is the universe like this? I am compelled to seek meaning, purpose, a reason. But does the cosmos have a reason? I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn, and Closer to Truth is my quest to find out. It is human nature to seek meaning, purpose, a reason. We cannot do otherwise. This does not mean, of course, that there is meaning, purpose, or reason, but it's a place to start. Traditionally, religion gives reason, whether the purpose of a personal God in Western religions or the meaning of cosmic consciousness in Eastern religions. But science has a different test for truth, and neither a personal God nor cosmic consciousness can pass it. Can science even deal with questions of meaning, purpose, reason? I begin with a physicist who thinks hard about the deep implications of science. The author of books about frontiers of knowledge and the future of science, Michio Kaku. Michio, here we are, scientists, human beings, who seem to have our hands on the fundamental nature of reality. Quantum physics at the smallest area. General relativity, and all the remarkable discoveries of cosmology, seeking a final theory. We're getting very close to really understanding it. Is there any meaning to all of this? Is there any reason? Can we ask the why question?
Well, I think it is legitimate to ask the why questions because in some sense, our role in the universe, where do we fit in this larger scheme of things? That's the ultimate goal of science itself. Now, remember that there's conflicts. When Galileo, for example, turned his telescope to the heavens, people immediately asked him, where's heaven? The purpose of life is to live a good life to go to heaven. That's why we are here. That gives us meaning to go to heaven. And they asked Galileo, where is heaven? And Galileo looked, and he looked, and we're still looking. And we see no heaven out there. And so science forces us to push back the boundaries of what we know, where we are in the scheme of things. And I think it's a good thing, because I think we know where we stand with regards to the much larger universe. Some people say, well, if you're so smart, you physicists know so much, is there a unified theory of happiness? Is there a unified theory of meaning to it all? Well, I personally don't believe that there's an equation out there written in the sky which says what you've been struggling for. I don't see that. However, I do see the search for a theory of everything illuminating how we fit into the larger scheme of things, our role in the universe. But then people say, but that's not what I want to know. I want to know, what's in it for numero uno? What's my meaning in life? And I tell people the following. It's too easy to have meaning just plop down from the heavens onto our lap. We have to work for it. We have to create our own meaning. It's a process of self-discovery. Now, for me, example, I tend to think that all of us are born with certain talents, certain abilities, and we have to reach the maximum of our capabilities and potential. Why? To make the world a better place. That doesn't mean that the trumpets are blaring when I make that statement. But for me, this is my purpose in life.
Well, certainly, whatever your purpose is, it now must conform to the laws of physics. That's a given. Beyond that is the question. Is there some larger purpose, or is the only purpose that which we derive? And maybe some would say artificially. Maybe the meaning that you're talking about is sort of trying to tack on artificially a meaning to where no meaning exists. Why don't you come clean and say, as a scientist, here are the laws, you have to conform to it, I don't see meaning in it, and that's it.
Well, I think there's a spectrum of answers that you get when you interview cosmologists and theoretical physicists. On one hand, you have the people who say the universe is pointless. There is no point, dummy. You're trying to put human values on something that has no human values. On the other hand, you will get physicists, mainly old-fashioned ones, but they say that the purpose of life is to glorify God. That's why they discovered the laws of physics. That's the purpose of the universe. Well, I don't think that this scale is the proper way in which to look at the full dimension of things. I personally don't think that you're going to find meaning in a unified field theory. An equation which explains electrons and neutrons and protons is not going to make you happy, okay?
Okay, we're putting that off the table, that there's not going to be some ultimate guideline, some ultimate equation, some ultimate...
No email from heaven.
No email from heaven, but something that you infer, that you... Sounds like a rationalization to me. It's trying to impose something that nothing's... Maybe it'll make us feel better, and I'm all for that. Take care of the earth, take care of our families, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it is really kind of irrelevant.
I don't think so, because it gives structure and meaning to life. Freud, for example, was asked, what is the meaning of life, right? And he said, well, what gives us structure, what gives us meaning in life are two things, okay? To work and to love. And if you think about it, we as human beings need to work, we need to love, or else we go insane. We live a pointless life, of a pointless existence. And I think that's a very foundational question, that any theory of meaning has to embrace the very foundations of who we are, that we have to work and we have to love. Now, what does theoretical physics say about this? Well, it may talk about creation, it may talk about the harmony of the universe, the glories of equations and so on and so forth, but it's not going to tell you how to be a better person. It's not going to fulfill that yawning gap inside your soul that says, why am I here? To begin with. And that's why I say the process of self-discovery is the way to do it. To some people, they say, well, it's a cop-out. I want that email from heaven. Hey, it's not coming.
No email from heaven, no surprise. I can imagine myself creating my own meaning, purpose, or reason. I find myself doing it. But satisfying, it is not. Big meaning with a capital M needs some deep or ultimate sense. meaning, purpose, or reason that is self-created is, to me, self-defeating. So, can meaning, purpose, or reason be anchored in reality? I look to the only reality we really know, the physical universe. I meet a cosmologist who revolutionized understanding of how the universe began and how stunningly vast multiple universes may actually be, Alan Guth. Alan, when I think of what inflation means and what happens in such a small period of time that generates universes beyond belief, and then when you think of the multiverse, I can't decide whether I should be depressed because there's no meaning or purpose, or be absolutely elated that we human beings can understand this. It's a bizarre, schizophrenic view. Do you find yourself with some of those same things?
Yeah, I think I do. I think we are in a schizophrenic situation here. But I would add that's not all my fault. Even before inflation, we lived in a visible universe where there were 10 to the 10 stars in our own galaxy, and 10 to the 10 galaxies in our visible universe, and the possibility at least that some substantial fraction of those stars have planets around them. And that means that even without inflation, there's the obvious situation that we're very small compared to the size of the universe.
Well, you certainly made the problem worse.
Maybe so, but when it's already 10 to the 22 stars, it doesn't really matter if it gets much bigger, I would say, philosophically. So I won't accept much of the blame, just a little. So I think what it means is that we should accept the fact that that we're responsible for the meaning of our own lives, that cosmically we're presumably not important. Our Earth will live and die, and if you were looking at the cosmos as a whole, you would never notice that the Earth even existed. So I think we have to accept the idea that it's the human race that creates the importance of the human race.
The fact that the human race can see so far beyond itself is really a remarkable thing. Cosmology as a science is measured in decades.
That's right. And from my point of view, the successes are almost miraculous. I mean, the fact in the cosmic background radiation on the basis of pure theory, and then people can go out and measure it and find exactly what was predicted, to me is just fantastic. I think it's a remarkable achievement for the human race that we've reached this point, and I think it is something that we should feel very proud about, and I do.
To Alan, the universe is so big and we humans are so small. The cosmos, he says, sets for us no meaning and no purpose. But we can make our own meaning and our own purpose in our own lives. But made-up meaning feels like fantasy. I like to read fiction, not believe it. Perhaps human capacity is too limited. What could possibly enhance it? What could be smarter or more aware than humans? Extraterrestrial intelligences? Could sentient aliens help us find meaning? I asked two scientists who lead the search for extraterrestrial intelligences, Jill Charter and Doug Backock. Jill, Doug, I have this sense the work that you do with the search for extraterrestrial intelligence can reflect in a way different than everyone else I'm talking to on this question about the potential of reason or purpose in the cosmos. Does that make any sense?
I might prefer to answer the question, what might the universe maximize as a way of dealing with purpose? And the thing that the SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, brings to the table that's quite different than other views is we might be able to find that the universe maximizes the number of biological life forms, intelligent life forms. That might be that all of the laws of physics and chemistry interact in this universe, so that's the end product.
That's a very significant statement if that were the case.
And I don't know how else you might conclude that. It also might be that the universe operates to maximize the number of black holes, and or some other thing. But this is one particular small cut at what it might the universe might be all about, what it's the best at making.
And we can potentially say something about purpose or rationality or meaning in a broader sense, too. You know, the ideal would be if we receive a signal from another civilization, there's a message embedded in it. And then the question becomes, what is universal? We often think of mathematics as being potentially universal. You know, I would love it if a series of prime numbers is the first thing that we get. But we have to ask, are there certain mathematical principles that any technologically sophisticated civilization would know? So that gets into a question about whether there is some inherent reality to mathematical concepts, whether that's somehow tied in to the physical structure of the universe. If we can get just the knowledge that another civilization has intended to send us a message, that gives us a sense of purpose, which is that there are beings out there who have a purpose and intent on making contact.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Purpose can just mean intent.
Purpose could be something that may not be inherent in the physical structure of the cosmos, but maybe something that arises in the same way that we human beings have individual purposes. Maybe there are purposes and intents of other intelligent beings as well.
The possibility of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, or over generations after generations, the lack of finding it. How would either of those answers reflect on our understanding of purpose in the universe?
Let's take the lack of other intelligent species. I think it would be a very intriguing problem to understand how chemistry, which seems to be a deterministic process,
Yes.
and biology, which arose from chemistry, did not happen anywhere else. How is the universe constituted so that it could have happened only once or only now?
If we are indeed so alone, does that put extra responsibility on humanity to do more things in the cosmos?
Some have actually argued that if we search for hundreds or thousands of years and don't detect any intelligence out there, that makes life all the more precious on Earth.
Well, I think if we were to find ourselves in that position, I think I would be more inclined than I am now to ask why, and then to entertain this idea of purpose. If indeed there is only a singular intelligent species within the cosmos.
And on the other hand, if there are other intelligent civilizations, is there something about that naturally brings this forth? And is there something built into the universe about that? I mean, the exciting thing of what you do is that any answer reflects deeply on this question.
Oh, I wouldn't disagree with you at all. No.
To me, whether we humans are alone or not alone in this vast cosmos speaks to questions of meaning and purpose. How so? Intelligent, self-aware life seems such an odd thing. What would a universe teeming with intelligent, self-aware life mean?
Okay. That's it. So it is now time for my own opinion on that. Okay, so now I will be using this image that I have right on the screen to explain what I feel about this particular topic and what I think it might, just be the ideal purpose of the universe or the ideal purpose of the cosmos, you understand? So now I need you to ride with me on this, and I want you all to listen with rapt attention. Now, if we say there is no purpose, if we claim to say cosmos or the universe has no purpose, what we are actually, literally saying is that there is no reason we are on this earth, that there is no purpose why we must be on this earth. And by saying that, we are saying that it's by accident or yes, it is, by accidents that we are on this earth. You understand? But to me, I don't see it as such. So now let's start with something. Let's start from, just like void, like say empty space. Now let's say somebody has a string, and then by playing that string or plucking the string, then that person is able to discover a note. Let's say note C. I want to use this example. It's something that we can all resonate with, that we can relate with quite all right. That is why I want to use sound. So I'm going to tell this particular story, or rather, let me say, I'm going to use this example, and then I will go deeply into the whole thing, the entitle of the universe, for us to be able to decipher what the purpose of the universe is likely to be. So now let's say the person plucked the string, and the person was able to discover a note, and let's say that note is called note C. Now, could we have said that the note has been in existence even before its discovery? You understand? And then the person realized that by holding the string in different ways and playing that particular same string, then the person could get more notes on that same particular string. But now the thing is, those notes, are they already in existence? That is the number one question. Now, if we were to dissect the whole thing, we then know that there is possibility for all the notes for them to be imagined, in the sense that a string, there are some things that must actually be in place, and there are some actions that must actually be applied before we could have the emergence of these notes in question. And so, as a result of that, it is ideal for us to argue that those notes are emergent. So now, by playing the string, there is a particular emergent energy, vibration, that results to, propagation in certain energy state for us to have a particular sound of the note that is being discovered. So based on that, we can say those notes have been emergent. Now, if you should get a thicker string and you play that, you will realize that the sound is different, from the initial one, and then you could as well get all the same notes as you have gotten for the, the first string. You understand? And with that, so let's say the second one, which is thick, that one is bass, you understand? And the initial one, let's say that one is at high frequency. And so probably if we get another string that is less thicker than that is less thicker than the last one and the first one, then we would probably get the mid frequency notes, but the discovered notes will be the same. You understand? So definitely we have this hierarchical order of the notes based on the different settings of the string, and based on the nature of the string. You understand? So now, having discovered all those notes, let's say we play note C, for instance. If the person should should just play the note C, ting, ting. So now, if you play the note once, ting, you are able to get that sensation of that note being in existence by its sound. And you are able to identify that note, based on the structure of the string and, the intensity of the vibration. And yes, you are able to have that, but there is nothing special more than that. You cannot derive any message from the note. You cannot derive, any sensible, thing from the note. But yet, yes, something has been discovered. Good. But now, let's now say that the note is being played at a certain interval. So we have that being played, continuously like that at a particular interval. So for instance, let's say we have 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, playing that in such that time interval would actually give us rhythmic vibe. So the person playing that could, be moving along with that rhythmic vibe. So basically with that, we know that the energy is fundamental. The energy is right there. But the note is a byproduct of the energy based on some certain conditions. And then we have the note to be an emergent occurrence in this case. So now, what that is telling us is that the note as it is, it has a form. And it is because of the form of that note that we could actually, instantiate that form in a space as an entity that we can relate with. Now, if you now play those notes melodically, such that you play the notes at different interval, and then you get melody, then you now know that the notes are actually telling story. Because at this point you can now get to see the usefulness of the notes, that they can actually entertain you. They can actually play together to give a sensible information. And with that, then those notes now become so valuable and so important. Because of what? Because they can actually be played together to tell story. The reason I said they tell stories for the fact that they will be played at different time interval, and then they will be played at ideal frequencies such that we have harmony. And with that, it will now be something we can relate with, something we can actually vibe with. And with that, they are part of that person's story. The person that discovered them, they are part of the person's story. So basically, the reason I'm saying this, I want us to have that understanding that the universe as it is a storytelling formation. And that is why we humans will resonate well with story. So now, if somebody is actually if somebody is just talking straight, that person's talk might, be boring to you. But if you have a kind of story that somebody is telling you, you will want to wait and listen to the end because of, the suspense in the story. You would want to know where the story will end, and that would interest you more than just having somebody talking to you. So we inherit the nature of the universe as a storytelling formation. Then another thing I want to say about the discovery of the notes is that, could the person that discovered those notes say that it is by his own capability that he was able to discover those notes? Now, if we look at it very well, let's say we have this human race at the point where there was nothing, no civilization, nothing at all. Now, the civilization that we have, or the civilization that we are currently enjoying, is as a result of, some people's effort to actually go beyond the ordinary, to discover new things. And for them to have discovered those new things, to me, the way I see it, it couldn't have been by their own effort alone. Then it means that there is something that they are connected to that is actually directing them towards the right path to make that discovery. And so if we say the universe is a storytelling formation, we inside the universe as humans, then it means that our life too, as we spend it every day, is a storytelling phenomenon. And then having the universe to be a storytelling formation, in the sense that, because of the fact that we have the beginning and the end. Universe has a beginning, and definitely it will have an end. So, for the virtue of having the beginning and the end, we know that our universe is a storytelling system. And I will get to the root of that story that the universe is actually telling. And from that, we can get to know the purpose of the universe. And we can get to know the purpose of being in this universe. So now, if we humans in the universe, being an intelligent being on earth, if we tell story as we live our lives, then it means that there is a bigger story, which is the story of the universe, that at a point in time our story must align with, for us to have that directional story that we actually align with the universe as it is. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that those people that have discovered the person who has discovered the notes couldn't have said he discovered them by his own intelligence, because right before he could discover those things, there was nothing to train, to teach, to coach him to discover those things. There is no place where he could point to that he got, the knowledge from. You understand? So, based on that, even though we know that every human has intuition, and then by the virtue of imagination, we can actually travel into the future to get new ideas and bring it back into our world. Even though with that, there is this interaction between we humans and the universe. And that interaction is what is actually guiding our path to do the right thing, or guide our path to those discoveries. Now, if we now look at it, we now know that education system is a byproduct of the efforts of humans who have traveled into the future to discover novel, things. And those things are the things that are being documented as our curriculum, syllabuses, and all that we now have as our education system. So basically, education system is right there to guide, people towards a particular, discipline, towards a particular profession. But basically, we humans, we are far more than the influence of education, because we influence education by our effort, by discovering new things to form that educational system, to develop that educational system. So now with that, we can get to know that our story is not limited to, it's not being constrained by what we have capability to develop. You understand? Our story is not being limited. Our capability, our potential can never be limited to what we have capability, to what we have, power to develop, to invent, to create. So now, there is, basically based on what I said now, we can see that we are in the universe, which is a storytelling formation. And as a result of that, our life as we live it day by day is a storytelling phenomenon. Now, having that at the back of our minds, then we can then move on. Now, what we're going to move on to is that this universe, what is that story? What is the purpose of the universe? That is the question we want to answer. I don't want us to forget that. But before we answer that, I want us to go through this image that I have right here. Okay, now when you look at this image, basically at the topmost you could see Shotadiology Lecture 2. Yes, there is this novel field that I titled Shotadiology. This Shotadiology, is a new study of, it's a study of scientific and artistic flipping mechanism of a system for a balanced solution of the universe. So it's a flipping mechanism, you understand, of the universe. Basically, Shotadiology, if I'm to tell the story, that will even elongate this live video more than I envisage, so I don't want to say more than that. But now let's go deeply into this. Mathematical analysis of flipping mechanism, that is what we have under the Shotadiology Lecture 2. Now, if you look at what we have right here, we have 2D. 2D would be in form of plane, but basically if you look at the top, we have 1D, where we have the red circle and then the blue circle. And then under it, we have another 1D, which is where we have blue circle and red circle. What I want you to know is that the line that we have that connects the convergence of red and the convergence of blue, that line, that is our relativity. Relativity deals with inverse relationship between time and energy. Now, time and energy, they are fundamental. There are 3 things that are fundamental based on my research discovery: time, energy and space. And I will go, deeply into why it is so. And then, when you look at the 1D under, you can see that one is being inversely connected to the one at the top. It must always be inverse, just as we usually have in quantum entanglement. It must always be inverse, because now when you look at it, where you have red line at the top, you have blue line. Where you have blue line at the top, you have red line. So the moment you have 1D being inversely related to another 1D, you have 2D. And this is the dimensional structure of the universe. So for 3D, it means that we're going to have a 2D and then another inversely related 2D to have 3D. Then 4D will be, we have 3D and another inversely related 3D to have 4D. Now this is the dimensional structure of the universe, and we have it in hierarchy. So having that, we can then get to know that the universe as we know, as we have it, has structure. Our universe has structure. So now, if we're now to go deep into, formula of everything and its application, for us to really get, detailed information about what I want to share with us today, we have this image. Now, this image is called time energy wave model. And if you look at the blue line, blue trajectory, that blue trajectory is the trajectory of time, while the red trajectory is the trajectory of energy. Now, when you look at it, time and energy, they are inversely related. What that is telling us is, anytime time scales wide, energy will actually be narrow, or energy will be low. So when energy is high, when time is high, energy will be low. That is the kind of relationship we have. And then when energy is low, when time is low, energy will be high. So when time scales narrow, energy will be high. You understand? So when time scales wide, energy will be low. When time scales narrow, energy will be high. So when you look at the kind of phenomenon that we have in the black hole, you know that the scaling of time to energy is narrow, and as a result of that, we're going to have highly intense energy action right inside the black hole. So with this, we can get to know that yes, it is ideal to have this kind of relationship, because in a cosmological space, we have time scaling so wide, and as a result of that, we can see that energy relative to the black hole is low in that wide, because energy will actually be expanded along with the expansion of time, and that would make energy to be low at quantum level. So now, the upper region, the horizontal line to the top, that is, I'm talking about the equilateral triangle that we have right inside the curvature of time to energy. So the horizontal line to the edge where we have bigger blue convergence, that is the classical realm. And then the horizontal line down to the point where we have red convergence is quantum realm. So now, when you look at the whole thing, I want you to look at where we have application of FOE. FOE is, the abbreviation for formula of everything. And then the T, the M equal to capital UM plus 4M. That is the formula of everything. By applying this formula, we're able to get this equilateral triangle. And so, I will briefly, discuss how we get this thing. Right here, where we have real quantum mass, positron, we have the value of positron, because the value of positron is going to be the same thing with the value of electron. So now, if we should put this value right inside the formula of everything, in the place of the two m's, then we're going to have classical mass what, which will be 2,277,250,000 kilograms, right inside this equilateral triangle. You can see where the blue, right where that small blue is converged, that is the classical mass worth. But if you look at the quantum region, we only have the big convergence, which is quantum arbitrary suspension. And the big convergence blue that we have at the top is the classical arbitrary suspension. So now, the real mass worth at quantum level is outside the time energy system. And so right inside the quantum equilateral triangle, there is no convergence of real quantum mass at all. Why is it like that? It's because the operation at quantum level is different from the operation at classical level, and that is why we could have the divergence. And the divergence that we have is the reason that it's so difficult for mainstream scientists to actually unify quantum mechanics to classical mechanics. So now, by having that, then when you now supply the classical mass worth into the formula of everything, so let me try and raise this thing up and see. It's like we have some calculations here. So now I want you to look at here now the first line, where we have dm equal to 2.5 times 10 raised to power 39. Now you can see the value of electron right inside the bracket, and then you can see another value of electron in the bracket of the 4. And so we have this value, and that is the classical counterpart, the classical mass worth. Now, if we were to now use the classical mass inside the formula, then what we will get will now be this 5.7 times 10 raised to power 48. This value that we have, we need to extend it in standard form for us to see what is actually happening. And after expanding it, we realize that the value of weak conveying force, which is 4m of the formula, is being suspended at 32nd of the zeros. So now we see that these zeros, they are the interval between the weak conveying force value to the strong conveying force value. So now what we need to do is to manually annihilate the suspended zeros. And when we do that, we're going to get the vertical line that we have, which is going to serve as the baseline of the equilateral triangle. So now, basically, this suspension that we have, we actually travel from the Big Bang diagonally to the topmost region, where we have the blue convergence as classical arbitrary suspension. And that is an action which must as well have a reaction. So the reaction of time will now be the trajectory of energy. And that trajectory of energy is what we have under, and that is the quantum region area. So that is the red equilateral line down. And so you can see that the value that we have is the same. Now, the value we got before extending it is 5.7 times 10 raised to power 48. Now, look at here, the curvature of the wave. What do we have? Yes, you can see that we have 5.7 times 10 raised to power minus 48 for this quantum region. And if I should drop this down for the classical region, we have 5.7 times 10 raised to power 48. So now, by having this equilateral triangle, we have the symmetric nature of the universe. And so the vertical line, which we got by annihilating the suspended zeros, we realize that that line is longer than normal. It's longer than the limit of that equilateral triangle, and that is actually pointing to asymmetric nature of the universe. So even inside the symmetric nature of the universe, we have these asymmetric mechanics, because at quantum level there is this operation of decay which facilitates the mass convergence at classical level. So quantum mechanics is not independent of classical mechanics, and that is why when we are on Earth, we can actually see the Earth being flat, and when we move away from the Earth, we are traveling into the space, and so we will get to a point where we'll be able to see the full shape of the Earth. So our interval from where we are to the Earth, we can actually liken that to, the position we need to be to get reality. But let's say we go far into the space, deeper into the space, to the point that the Earth now appears as a dot. Then the dot can be likened to the quantum system, while where we are, we can be likened to the classical system. So right there, if we should move further, deeper into the space, such that the point of that Earth is nowhere to be found, then that can be likened to the complex system. And for us to get that Earth at its right position where it is, we need to actually travel instantly to that point. Because if we are traveling within the speed of light, we will not get reality. Even though we get to where the Earth is, it will not be the exact position where Earth has to be. And that is why entanglement, you can see that in quantum entanglement we have instant transmission of information. Now, for us to get consciousness, there must be this instant virtue, which is, the time trajectory. Time, like I've been saying in other videos, time by default is instant. When time is in relativistic scaling to energy, then it becomes continuous. Energy by default is infinite. When in relativistic scaling to time, that is when it becomes discrete. So we need to know that. So now, having said that, how is this whole thing now? Okay, now let's quickly look at the manual annihilation. The manual annihilation will now have this value. Please take note that this value doesn't have point. So we have 9,109 divided by 10 raised to power 32, that suspension point. And so we'll extend the fraction. We then have it to be 9.109 times 10 times 1 all over 10 raised to power minus 32. So finally we get 9.109 times 10 raised to power minus 32. By having this value, it shows that the momentum has been shifted into the black hole, because we have traversed that vertical trajectory 2 times. Now, the trajectory of time is one-way traffic. We cannot traverse it 2 times. So by using the real electron's mass watt to get the classical mass watt, we have traversed the trajectory once. And by now using the classical mass watt to reconfirm the electron's mass watt, that would have shifted, the trajectory into the black hole, because we can only traverse it once. So we traverse it. The vertical line is so tiny that we only have chance of traversing it once to get reality. So it means that we can only get the reality from the quantum to the classical, or if we have the classical value already, we can use it to get the reality at quantum level. So now, based on that mathematics, how is that related to the reality, to the purpose of the universe? Now, the purpose of the universe is this. Please listen attentively. The purpose of the universe is to live, to die. The purpose of the universe is to live, to die, and then die to live. I know you might be flabbergasted with that, but basically, if we look at it, let's look at it this way. Our cells, they keep on dying, they keep on renewing their cells. Our cells keep on renewing their cells for the classical system of our being. Yes, for the classical system of our beings to be sustained. Basically, that is what is happening in this mathematical discovery. The quantum realm, the quantum mechanics, is constantly decaying mass force in order to facilitate mass convergence at classical level. So if human cells could be renewed just to sustain the classical system of our beings, then we can see that is actually synonymous to what we have in this time energy wave model. So that means that the cells they die to let the classical system live. But there will be a point where the classical system will now have to die, and that will sustain the quantum system to a certain point. So now, I will now take us to that level now. At this vertical line, the mass convergence of quantum mass is outside the system. That is telling us that this system that we have, let's call it 2D, it has been connected to a higher dimension. So we can call the higher dimension 3D. So 2D, which is the substrate dimension of that 3D, cannot be fully ordained or cannot be fully ushered into its full potential without getting connected to the higher dimension. Just like, the scenario of somebody moving away from the earth. So there is no way we can get reality of that earth without having a relativistic, connection by traveling inversely to the earth. So quantum mechanics is not independent of classical mechanics, and that is why this unification which God has inspired me to develop by developing formula of everything is highly ideal and necessary for the advancement of science in general. So now, by having the mass convergence of quantum mechanics outside the system, it means that the system has connected to a higher dimension. And so the positron will be flipped such that we now have flipped equilateral triangle just as we have it into the black hole. And so when you look at the trajectory of energy in that black hole, which is the region, to the right after the vertical line, you can see that energy is now increasing. Energy will continuously increase to sustain entropy. And so we can have time too, moving towards the singularity of the black hole. So this phase that we have is the gravitational phase, and right there we could see. So now that effect, we call it butterfly effect, because the tiny decay of -1 has resulted to almost about 2 billion decay of classical mass worth. So now, if you look at that whole system, you can see that the quantum mechanics is constantly renewing itself to sustain the classical system for us to live. But in the black hole, that system is being flipped such that the classical mass world is now being decayed, then to sustain the quantum mechanics. Now, this edge where we have line, that is the neutron star suspension, and then the Big Bang, we have inflationary suspension. Right inside the compacted equilateral triangle towards the singularity, we have mass convergence. And right there, when you apply formula of everything, what we get is quasar-like signal. So we have swinging forth and back signal right there. And there, we realize that the mass worth of, the power of electron is restored back to 31, minus 31, while the base, got decayed to value of 1.1. Now, right there, you can see a kind of asymmetric too. Asymmetric in the sense that the entirety of the mass worth, the base mass worth of electron is not being totally decayed. And so, if it were to model symmetric nature, then it has to be -1 to +1. But that is not what we have. We have -1, which is the difference of -31 to 32, down to the +1.1. So it is asymmetric, and it is for that reason I said space is fundamental. So if you look at this vertical line, this is where we have reality. This is where we are able to connect to consciousness. So now you see that where we have curvature, energy will be accelerated. In fact, it will be constantly accelerated. And that acceleration will actually smoothen out the discrete nature of energy, such that energy will now become continuous at that tiny point of that vertical line. And as a result of that, we could have global now. And by having that curvature that aligns with the energy's curvature, we're going to have standing wave. Standing wave is a kind of wave that has no direction. It has no direction. It's undulating but has no direction. And this vertical line is the same thing as that. So this vertical line is what I call reality field, because being instant, it is instant by being vertical. That means time trajectory is instant. But being elongated by energy has made it to be a field. Because in a field you can have momentum, and then field will be something that will, pervade the whole available space. So now the tiny space we have is being filled up by that elongation, and we have it to be a field. But it's a static and undulating field. And right inside the field, we can have instant transmission of information. And that is why entanglement is right from quantum level to the complex level. And so the transmission we have there is instant, because it's at the present phase of time peregrination or at event horizon. So we have this reality at event horizon, because event horizon is the transiting point where we have, the outward, where we have the propagation of the cosmological fields outwards. It's a transiting point where the all outward propagation of the cosmological space is being totally eliminated for us to have that necessary flipped mechanism that will convert that to a kind of field that is propagating inward, which will serve as the field of our black hole. So now, looking at this whole reality, we can now get the fact that the story that the universe is telling is that we should live to die, and then die to live. So by dying to live means there is a hope of another world. And that is why at the present phase where we get reality, there is this connection to the higher dimension, and that gives, complex system. So definitely our story is not limited. Human stories are not limited to them alone. There is this higher story that our story must align with. And basically the higher story I'm talking about is the story that Almighty God, because when you look at this whole system, then you can see the signature of God in everything. Because the flipping mechanism outside the time energy wave model, there is a particular video I did. Then I used that video to analyze the kind of conscious progression of, a neonate to a certain point, and then use that to prove the signature of God in the universe. So now the higher story, based on my own belief, is that there is Almighty God, the creator of the universe. There is a story He wants to write with our lives, and so our story must align with that. Anything aside that, there will be this void, and that void is a void of not being fulfilled. You understand? So basically, that is the whole thing. The purpose of the universe is to live our life in such a way that it aligns with the higher story of our Creator, such that when we live to die and then die to live again, we can then have, a better story to tell. So that is my take on this. I hope it's insightful and informative, and I hope it actually models the reality of the universe as it is being supported mathematically in this particular image. So basically that is the whole thing. So now with this, I think we can say universe has purpose, and our being in this universe is not an accident. So there is a purpose, there is a story that we tell every time, as we live our lives. So that is that. I remain my humble self. So if you want to get connected to me, in the description of this particular video, I have links to all my research publications, my books on Amazon, and my social media. You can get connected to me via those links, and then get to watch my videos. I have so many videos on YouTube that you can watch. Yes, I have a video on consciousness. With that video, you can get to know the true nature of consciousness based on this novel discovery. So that is that. Thank you. God bless you.